Welcome to Let's Be Honest. I'm Liana Ross, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I'm the assistant director of Gooding Wellness Group, and I'm on a mission to answer your real and honest questions, unfiltered, while also giving you the real and honest opinions of a mental health clinician on pop culture and trending topics. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Let's Be Honest podcast. I'm Liana, and I'm a licensed therapist and your host today. Today, we are going to be answering a listener question, which I'm excited about because this has come up more and more, I feel like, in sessions and conversations with people and other colleagues, and even in pop culture, which is non-monogamous relationships or open relationships. And today's guest is my good friend and licensed marriage and family therapist, Antonio Carratelli. He works with couples and the LGBTQIA population. We are so excited to be sponsored by Mountainside Treatment Center. Mountainside Treatment Centers offers inpatient and outpatient addiction services in New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. For more information, please visit them at www.mountainside.com. The Gooding Wellness Group and Mountainside have worked closely together for years, and we are excited to have their support on this podcast. Now let's get into today's episode. Welcome, Antonio.
Thank you for having me, Liana. Happy to be here. Can't wait to get this conversation going. I deal with this a lot, so happy to talk about it.
Yes. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
What do you feel like is the biggest misconception when it comes to open relationships?
So someone wrote this question to me on Instagram, and when I talk to people that are either not in open relationships and kind of like distance themselves from it, or, a lot of my heterosexual friends maybe, one of the misconceptions that I hear a lot is, well, they're not happy in their relationship, so they're obviously looking for something else outside of it to kind of make up for the fact that something is missing, when, that could certainly be, we call those like parallel relationships, when we're not getting something in the current relationship and we seek parallel outside relationships to kind of satiate that need. That does happen. But the misconception piece is that that's what they all are. And that's definitely not the case. There's plenty of people who are in open relationships that are in it because of either kink, difference in sexual desire, and it's agreed upon. Mm-hmm. What else? There's people who are polyamorous, where they have so much love to give that simply one partner is, I don't want to say not enough, but both partners agree, hey, we could totally bring a third in, or maybe even swing with couples. Mm-hmm. So I would say the biggest misconception is like, oh, something must be wrong in the relationship, so therefore you're going out to fulfill that need.
That's really important to notice that, and the people that I've met that are in non-monogamous relationships, they're so happy in their relationship with their with their main partner, right? And it's just about whether it be fulfilling different sexual needs, like you said, or even part of their social life. It's just a part of their life that they are excited about. And it doesn't come always from like a lack.
Absolutely. What you're talking about is like the core relationship,
yes,
right? Like the core partner, the core relationship in polyamory. There's typically like that core, and then, maybe the partner has, a boyfriend or two, or a girlfriend or two. There's plenty of couples where, let's say one of the partners is maybe bisexual, and they have an agreement where, let's say the man in the relationship is bisexual, and, sometimes the wife is okay. Oh, you can have a boyfriend, or, they'll have threesomes. Or if, we're going deeper into this, then there's the fetishes of like cuckolding. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with cuckolding?
I don't know. I think a 40-year-old virgin.
Okay. What happens in 40-Year-Old Virgin with the
when
cuckolding?
He says, I've been cuckolded at the bar.
Oh, that's okay. So I'll explain what I think, and we'll see. So the cuckolding that I'm thinking of is when, for instance, the Well, there's a few different kinds, but sometimes, the wife is allowed to go and have sex with other men
Mm-hmm.
and come back into the relationship with her core partner.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's like a power dynamic.
Oh.
And sometimes it's, sometimes the husband gets off on the fact that his wife is having sex with other men.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a certain type of fetish.
Certain type of fetish, yeah. But that's not all polyamory, and that's not all, open relationships.
Right, one type. So let's say if one partner, depending, it doesn't even matter if it's homosexual, heterosexual relationships, is interested in a non-monogamous relationship. How does one introduce that? Like, I could imagine that's really difficult to even open that up to your partner and probably scary. So, like, what is the process?
Yeah, I've definitely had people on the consultation call say, I'm thinking about an open relationship and I'm afraid to tell my partner. And when I start that therapeutic relationship, my questions are actually nothing about, do you want to be in an open relationship between the two partners? It's more, tell me about your relationship. What is the trust like?
Mm-hmm.
What is the commitment? I'm thinking of like the Gottman Sound Relationship House, where like the pillars are trust and commitment that hold up the roof of the house, which there's, the 7 layers. So when it comes to introducing that conversation to their partner, I often will like slow the couple down and say, hey, wait, let's talk about your relationship. Let's take inventory of your needs that are being met. What are the needs that aren't being met? Because again, that common misconception of people going outside of their relationship to satiate an unmet need. When you're coming to me for therapy for that reason, I'm like, wait, we got to find out, what's your relationship like? Why is this coming up? Because what'll happen is resentment could build, and I've definitely come across it before in working with people where maybe one partner wants the open relationship and maybe the other person is like, yeah, you can do whatever you want, whatever.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And because, let's say if it's about like a difference in sexual desire, right? Like I want to have sex every day. You want to have sex once a month. And, often some couples will, again, this comes back to the misconception where people think that's what is happening with all relationships. And that discrepancy in sexual desire could actually be rooted in resentment, miscommunication.
A lot more stuff going on.
There's so much more stuff. And also, like, if you're telling me in couples therapy that, you and your partner have different sexual desires and you want to rebuild intimacy and they talk about, wanting to have more sex, I'll say, okay, so how often do you guys, just kiss? Or when you're out at the bar, do you put your hands on the small of your partner's back? When you're crossing the street, do you kind of put your hands in front? Like those little intimate moments,
right.
All of those things like build up to the vulnerability and the trust and the safety, which allows the partner to be like, okay, my head and heart and body are aligned and ready to have sex. So there's like so much more that goes into it. And when the couples are debating an open relationship, I want to hear about that stuff. I want to hear, what does the intimacy look like in your relationship? And what are the factors that are contributing to the desire to open up the sexual relationship to, other people?
That's right. I like that a lot because it's figuring out the why. It's figuring out the motive, the intention, which I think is really important when it comes to building rapport, and also like seeing, like you said, why are they wanting to do this, or why is one person even wanting to do this?
Hi, my name is Gordon Gooding. I'm the founder and director of the Gooding Wellness Group here in Cold Spring Harbor, New York. We are a group of mental health providers that offer individual and family counseling here on Long Island. We believe the first step for caring for your mental health is to talk and to learn about it, which is what this podcast does such a great job of. If it has a name, someone else has been through it, and so can you. If you ever need a professional that cares about what you are facing, please feel free to reach out to us. Our counseling services are available throughout New York State through our teletherapy service, And we also offer in-person sessions in our beautiful offices here on Long Island, New York. You can reach us at goodingwellness.com or by calling 631-351-2940. Remember, there's nothing that you need to face alone. Until then, keep listening, be deliberate with your mental health, and keep it honest.
Now, let's take it a step further with how do you navigate non-monogamous relationships? I mean, I can imagine they're not for everyone, but so let's say if two people are ready for this, how does, I guess, the quote unquote correct way to navigate?
So you're saying both partners in this relationship are saying, yes, we want an open relationship or non-monogamy.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
Communication, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of me that would say definitely think about bringing a therapist or a couples therapist into the mix just for having that kind of safe space to kind of talk about all of these rules or parameters. Maybe rules is not the right word.
Guides.
Yeah. Parameters, guides, for instance, both partners are into it. Okay. But then there's so many unanswered questions. Like,
Mm-hmm.
are you allowed to sleep at that person's house? Or, is it like, okay, on a Friday night, we're going out to the bar and instead of like being intimate with each other, we're going to pick up a third?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it, I could find one, you could find one?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it swinging couples?
Right.
So, when you say, how do you navigate it? Again, I think there's so many, and again, I think this was another one of the listener questions. It's about laying it all out on the table. Kind of like when you're going to buy a house,
Mm-hmm.
you say, okay, how many bedrooms do we want? How many bathrooms? Okay, where do we want to live? Do we care about the school district?
How much money do you make? We need to know what we're walking into.
All of these things. And I think one of the things that maybe people don't necessarily do is have enough of an open dialogue about it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you come across couples that will have like a don't ask, don't tell, where it's like, you know what, we both acknowledge that we have these sexual needs, but talking about it builds resentment. Mm-hmm. So let's just like not tell each other as long as we sleep in the same bed at night, whatever.
Wow. I see that. I see why though.
Yeah. And, there could be an argument about, okay, does that work for the relationship or is that maladaptive? Mm-hmm. But again, I think it comes down to each relationship and a conversation about resentment, constantly, checking in with your partner about the status of the relationship. And one thing that I really like suggesting when partners are in an open relationship or non-monogamy is close the relationship for a bit, right? Like go through periods where you close it and you do that work with your partner and then you take inventory. And then if you decide to reopen it, reopen it. A lot of times when couples in open relationships do this work, sometimes the therapist will suggest, hey, let's close the relationship. What do you think about that?
Ooh, so almost like regroup.
Regroup. Absolutely. Huddle. Let's do it. Right? And also you'll find that, if there's hesitation to closing it, that's indicative of, okay, let's talk about that. Why not?
Yeah, there's something going on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. Has that ever come up for you? Like what does that usually mean, I guess, if they're not
What do you mean?
Willing to close it?
If they're not willing to close it. I mean, it could mean so many things, Is it that if it's related to, let's say, sexual desire, sometimes people, sometimes you hear people fall in and out of love with their partner over the years due to resentment or, life happening. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, let's say, sometimes people lose libido from a chronic illness. Sometimes people, go through, let's say they lose their job, they lose their identity in a way. And getting to that place of being sexually aroused is really difficult. So, those are just two examples. Mm. But then there's also examples of, people who maybe want to have their cake and eat it too. Or, maybe, I've also dealt with when there's like a sexual addiction or sexual compulsion. Sometimes, There's porn addiction that, causes some of these like sexual desire issues within the relationship. So did I answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, great.
No, there's a lot of reasoning for it.
Yeah, so many.
So you mentioned polyamory. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how realistic it is?
Okay, so polyamory literally is like many love.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So the way that I personally look at polyamory is through the lens of these individuals have a lot of love to give, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it doesn't have to be sexual relationships. It could just be romantic, right? Like we have people that are pansexual, asexual, aromantic. So, not all polyamorous couples are, sexually active with, their others, significant others. So, okay. Did I explain it enough?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then the other question was,
how realistic is it?
How realistic is it?
Like, is it possible for someone to be in a relationship? I mean, you spoke a lot to the non-monogamy, but I guess to have so many partners.
Okay, so with polyamory, I think what you'll find is that it's not about many partners. It's probably, at least in what I've experienced, I think it's more like core relationship,
mm-hmm.
and then maybe like a boyfriend or two or three, depending on the people. And maybe they even share their significant others with their core relationship as well. In terms of having like many partners, I would say that's more like non-monogamy, like open relationship where, maybe it's just, very rooted in the physicality of like sex and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Or swinging, for instance, if you ever go on a cruise and you see a pineapple on the door.
I learned that.
Yeah,
yes.
That is a swinger. They are ready to get down. Have you ever been approached by a swinger?
No, I have not.
No. Okay. Yeah, me either. So I just posted a funny meme where it's two couches. Did you see this? It's two couches, and on one couch is a graham cracker and a piece of chocolate, and on the other couch is a marshmallow. And it says at the bottom in quotations, "We have a proposition for you."
Oh my God.
And obviously it's to make a s'more and have a threesome.
That's amazing.
So how realistic is it? I think anything is possible
mm-hmm.
with communication, trust, checking in, and it doesn't have to be finite. I think that you can constantly check in with each other. And let's say, okay, we're in a relationship and we've decided, let's try it out.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to go to an orgy tomorrow.
Right.
We could. And that's a thing. But perhaps we start small mm-hmm. and we experiment. Okay, maybe we say we're going to just try it out and maybe take home a third
mm-hmm.
from when we're out at the club.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Small steps.
And then you have the interaction. And then the next day or after, whatever, you talk about it. Okay, I hated that. Did you like it?
Mm-hmm.
You loved it. Okay, great. So you loved it. I hate it. I think we should close the relationship and we should take more time to process this. Let's talk about it in couples therapy. So if the thing that led us to do that is maybe a difference in sexual desire, we had that experience. We got data.
Yes.
So now we can use that data to come up with a decision. Do we want to explore that more? Or do we say, okay, you know what? Resentment is building. This feels really uncomfortable. This is bringing up stuff from the past.
More data.
It's all, I look at it all as an experiment in data. And, some people have more difficulty doing that. So I really think, to answer your question, how realistic is it? It's very realistic. You just have to be willing to talk about it.
You got to have those foundations of commitment and trust. Really, that's what it sounds like to have
Absolutely.
Really any of this stuff work.
Absolutely. And I would say if we don't have trust, but we're committed, that could mean we're committed, but there's not trust. So therefore, am I doing things that you wouldn't agree with behind your back?
Oof, yeah.
Okay, we have trust. I trust you, but I'm not committed. What does that look like? I'm not sure.
It's still not the best because the house is not standing up. We need both commitment and trust.
Absolutely. And one thing I just want to clarify is just because some therapists will advertise that they work with non-monogamy does not mean if you go to that therapist, they will be suggesting it, pushing you towards it, or anything like that.
That's good to know.
If a couple comes to me that is not in an open relationship, but they're talking about like sexual desire discrepancies, the most I would do is say, have you guys ever been in an have you guys ever explored an open relationship? That's it. And usually the answer is, oh, we tried it once or twice. We're not really into it. It doesn't work. Or, oh, hell no.
Mm-hmm.
It's really up to the couple and each individual dynamic.
And then and we work with them and their goals, or no one's pushing anything on them, right?
Exactly.
I learned so much. I was taking notes in my head, so much. Please tell people where they can work with you and find you and follow you.
Okay, so on Instagram, I just created the Instagram, so bear with. It's manifest.therapy. So manifest.therapy on Instagram. And how can they work with me? So I work at Spring Health. So if you work for a big corporation, Spring Health offers EAP to the employees sometimes. But if you're trying to work with me individually, there's gaytherapycenter.org. And then there's my website, antoniocarratelli.com. So there's so many ways. So many ways to end up in my therapy office. I literally have a color-coordinated calendar.
And organized.
Yeah, based on the different tax IDs that I work at. Yeah, it's a lot.
Organization is key.
Organization is key, as is communication.
Oh, there we go. Thank you again to Antonio for coming on the podcast today. And thank you guys for listening to another episode of Let's Be Honest. Follow the podcast and submit your questions to be answered on the pod at Let's Be Honest Pod on Instagram. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and head to the show notes for all the links and information for what we discussed today. See you next time.